Okay, so this is the second video of me telling stories, spooky stories or whatever. I'm going to go ahead and jump right in because I don't want to waste any time with exposition. Watch the first video, you'll get it. Okay, so my friend Jared wrote into me this really great story. It's not quite as spoopy, but it's a little bit supernatural. So he said, "Hey, so here's one of my stories. I first started practicing witchcraft about 11 years ago, and like so many people, I tried to cast a love spell. I wasn't targeting anyone in particular. Okay, well, kinda. I was targeting myself. My last relationship was a difficult one, and when it ended, I felt like I would never find love again and/or I didn't deserve love. So I cast a spell to not only draw love in general towards me, but also to make myself more open to receiving love. Under, I believe, a full moon, in a cast circle, I recited the spell I wrote in my Book of Shadows, meditated, and waited. After a while, I went back inside. A month or so later, I got a call from my sister from another mister, and she's telling me that she knows I've been down since my previous breakup, but she wants to set me up with her husband's cousin because she thinks that we'd get along famously. We didn't quite hit it off right away, but instead of just saying, fuck it, I kept her in mind. And a year and a half later, when we were both at different places than we were when we first met, we decided to try again. And now we're married." I really like that one because I think it's really sweet, and I really like Jared and his wife are just really fantastic people, so that is one of my favorites. I'm going to go ahead and tell another one from Sammy. Her first one is so long. I'm probably going to have to dedicate an entire one to it, so it's going to take a while. So yeah, this is actually her third story that she sent me. Nothing happened after that until I turned 30. So after the other stories, which we'll get to eventually. Ever since I saw Some Like It Hot, the Hotel del Coronado was my dream getaway. I also heard it was a haunted hotel. Half the time those things are bunk, so I did research. I knew what room I wanted, and the girl said they usually don't assign rooms ahead of time, but since we were celebrating, she'd do what she could, and score, I got the room. It was said to be the most haunted room in the hotel. That's all I knew about it. I looked up nothing because I didn't want to imagine things, like a placebo effect. I got in the room and I opened the closet and was instantly dizzy. The room was spinning and I felt so lightheaded. I was thinking, I'm just overwhelmed from being excited, and I ignored it. Later on, we're hanging out in the room and hammered, and all of us heard someone trotting around the room above us, which is impossible because we were on the top floor. Every time I went by the closet, I got dizzy. I chalked it up to being drunk. My friends got me cupcakes, and the hotel got me a cupcake, so we had 4 cupcakes. And we were hammered. I went to sleep first, and I wake up the next morning. We were all hungover, and there was a cupcake smashed and smeared all over the floor. Everyone was blaming me, but I kept reminding them that the drunk asses were up later than I was, and that I went to sleep first. I opened up the closet door, and the cupcake the hotel gave to me was sitting inside of it, perfect and completely untouched. I looked it up later. Turns out the guests complained of people walking in the room above them, and they're on the top floor. People experience immense dizzying effects standing in front of the closet. It turns out a maid who worked and/or lived there, had a rich lover who was a guest, ended up hanging herself from the pipe in the closet, and the pipe juts out and is crazy sturdy. No one knows if it was suicide or murder. Haunted hotels are probably my favorite because they're always really dramatic stories. And I had actually heard that the Hotel del Coronado was also haunted, so it was really nice hearing a story from a friend who had a personal experience. Though, I'm sorry, she didn't feel very well. That kind of sucks. My friend Katie writes in, ghost story, but a kind of happy one, not very scary. I was 8 years old when the family cat Ellie passed away. She was 13 years old and the last of the group of 3 cats my parents got when I was a toddler to leave the house on Blair Street, as Emily ran away when I was 6 and Sophie was put to sleep when I was 7. She was also the only cat to die in the house. I distinctly remember my dad walking up the basement stairs holding the box lid that held her body. Early in the morning, she retreated into the basement, found a box lid, and fell asleep for the last time. That night was the first time I ever heard my mom cry, and the night seemed darker. Fast forward to 5 years later. I'm 13 years old, they're new cats, and I'm staying up past 10 p.m. It's about midnight as I walk down the basement stairs in the dark, and I see something cat-shaped dart out of the corner of my eye. I expect to hear a thud or the silhouette of one of the new cats downstairs, but I don't see anything. I walk down the stairs expecting to hear a meow or paw prints on the stairs. Nothing. I do what I need to do and I move on my way. I tell my little sisters, and sure enough, they start seeing the cat too. Back again. One of my sisters, too young to know what Ellie looked like, describes what the cat looked like very clearly. As I'm sure you can guess, the description matched. Now, I'm not a believer in ghosts, let alone ghost cats, but I will say this. My family has come down with about physical maladies the past few years, from kidney stones to hip surgeries to broken arms. All circumstances could have been fatal, but were not. I like to think Ellie is protecting my family from death itself, our own little guardian spirit for the family in the blue house on Blair Street, which is incredibly sweet. Thank you, Katie, for that one. I'm going to tell another one of my stories. Nothing too exciting, but a little bit weird and creepy. So, the house that I explained the last story in was probably where I had most of my stuff happen, and it was kind of an older house, so it kind of felt kind of creepy sometimes anyway. But when I used to stay in the other room, because I moved rooms a lot, I stayed in this other room, and there was a stereo in it, like an old stereo system, and I say old now, but it was like top of the line, awesome then. And it would like had a tape, like a dual tape player and all that stuff. So one day, my sister and I are hanging out, listening to music, nothing exciting, and at some point, like, we get up and we turn it off and we go downstairs. I think my grandpa had just shown up, so we were like excited to go downstairs. And we made a point of turning it off because we had to stop at the stairs and go, okay, well, no, you go back and turn it off. So we stop at the top of the stairs and we have this discussion of like who should go back and turn it off. And one of us runs back. It might have been me. Turns back and turns it off. And you had to turn a different knob from the volume, and we had it down like pretty medium because like my parents were home and they didn't want to listen to it. So we turned this other knob, turn it off. And it was like a turny knob, not even like a push button. So I, run back. One of us runs back and turns it off. And we get halfway down the stairs. We get to basically like the little landing in between because it does a little double back. We get to the little landing and the radio turns back on for no reason. And then, of course, we stand there for much longer debating who should go back and turn it off again. But that was super creepy, and we were both really creeped out by it. Not because it just happened, but because it seemed like really important when it happened. Like, it seemed like it was like a moment instead of just like it just turning back on. It felt like there was something to do with like the discussion we may have been having, or how creeped out we like suddenly got when we had to like discuss who would go back and do it, because for some reason we were really creeped out at the time. So anyway, it seemed like a really big deal. So that's my own little weird story. And this is one of my favorite stories from Brittany, just because it's really fun. So, okay, spooky story time. My entire life I have, and most of my family as well, have been plagued by spooky shit. I kid you not. I have tons of strange things that I've experienced that I could share, and actually lived in a house that was so famously haunted that several news stories were done on it around Halloween time back in my hometown. But I chose this one in particular because it's probably the most scared I've ever been in my entire life, and it really does make for a great ghost story. I swear up and down until the day I die that what I'm about to tell you is completely true and is the reason why I 100% believe in ghosts. When I was 18 years old, I used to babysit my little cousins quite a bit. One night I was leaving their house very late, maybe around 12:30, close to 1 a.m. I was in my car and came to a red light. There were no other cars on the road around me, and it was very dark because it wasn't a big city or anything, no lights around. I was sitting there at the light, and this weird feeling came over me, like I felt someone in the car with me, and I got really cold and the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I was thinking to myself, "Self, don't look in the rearview mirror, don't you dare look in that mirror," but curiosity got the better of me, and I looked. What, or rather who I saw, can only be explained as Wild Bill Hickok, looking gentleman with the long mustache, silly looking hat, and all, sitting in the back seat of my car, right there in the middle, so we had perfect eye contact when I glanced in the mirror. He didn't look solid like you and I do, but he didn't look like foggy or misty either, like you'd expect a ghost to be. He was just sitting there. That's the only way I can explain it, really. I freaked the hell out. Keep in mind, all of this took only seconds to happen. I was still sitting at the red light. Well, red light be damned. I slammed my foot so hard on the gas that my foot could have broken through the floor of my car. Thankfully, I was still the only car on the road, so me running the light didn't cause an accident. I lived only about 10 minutes away, but I think I made the drive this time in like 6 minutes. The longest 6 minutes of my life. I couldn't shake the feeling of someone sitting in my back seat. I fought the urge to look in the mirror the entire drive home. Finally, I make it back to my house. I jump out of my car, and I don't even close the door. My mom has always been in the habit of waiting up for me at night, so she was sitting on the couch when I ran into the house. I frantically tried explaining what had just happened, but all she could understand was, "Man in my car!" She wakes my dad up and runs outside for blood. I finally calmed down enough to explain to them. Dad, who's forever the skeptic, shrugs and goes back to bed. Mom believed me and tried to say maybe I just parked on top of a ghost who was out for a stroll, which sounded like a good enough explanation and made me feel better that maybe he wasn't actually riding in my car with me. But I just thought it was odd that a dead old-timey cowboy would be hanging out in Florida. So fast forward a couple of years. My parents are moving and we're loading and unloading things into the new garage. A box full of random stuff falls over, and the contents spill all over on the floor. I start throwing the stuff back in the box when I get that feeling again, the cold, sick feeling, and the hair stand up on the back of my neck. I was holding a very, very old black and white photo. In the photo, there were 3 men leaning on a fence with a horse on the other side of it. One of those men was the man I had seen in my back seat. I frantically shook the photo in my mom's face and yelled, "This is him! This is the man that was in the car that night!" She looked at the photo and explained to me that the man was actually one of my great-grandmother's brothers, and he had been killed shortly after the picture was taken when a mule kicked him in the head. So it appears my random cowboy hitchhiker was actually an old family member stopping by to say hello. I love that one because the old, creepy photo thing is it's a classic storyline that you get in a lot of things, like a lot of TV shows and stuff, but this actually happened to my friend. She saw this person and then years later saw it in a photo, and it turns out he's a real dude. So yeah, super creepy and kind of a great story. So that's going to be it for this one, and this video is probably going to be terrible because the dog would not stop barking, but not my fault. Thank you very much.